first rule arrives like a slap of wind. The sky tears open, and the cliff answers with spray and grit. Ava claws the air, a heartbeat from the drop. Rowan circles once, then twice, reading the storm-like script. Nyx rides the squall, a dark blade above the foam. The sea throws its voice against stone, daring wings to fail. The nest scent fades as wet salt takes the lungs. Ava said, "Hold me, sky, or end me fast." Rowan said, "Shape the gust, do not fight it." Rocks glitter with rain, slick with old stories. Nyx stoops, then vanishes behind a slate curtain. Lightning scrawls a vow no one can keep. The cliff's ledge fractures, pebbles skipping toward hunger. Ava kicks free, stunned by height and hunger and noise. Rowan said, "Tilt, small one, slice the crosswind." The clouds lean, heavy with verdict. Nyx returns, eye bright as iron, timing the dive to the drum of waves. Ava's shadow breaks upon the foam and mends again. The storm narrows the world to breath, feather, and choice. The storm does not argue, it declares. Ava rides a seam of air that frays under her weight. Rowan keeps a patient orbit, measuring angles invisible to landbound eyes. Nyx tests distance, receding, then returning like a whispered dare. Spray writes quick messages on wings and vanishes. The cliff pulls at memory, but altitude is a new law. Ava said, "If I look down, I fall inside the looking." Rowan said, "Feel the lift where the wave meets the gust." A rogue current buckles the air, and the sky stalls like a missed step. Ava dips, then steadies, muscles learning geometry by pain. Nyx loops high, studying rhythm rather than panic. The rain softens for a count, then hardens again. Rowan said, "Trim the wrist of your wing." Ava answers with a small correction, and the air forgives her. The sea holds its breath, then laughs in foam. Clouds drag like nets, catching light and dropping it in shards. Ava finds a corridor of calmer air and breathes once, clean and sharp. Rowan shifts position, a compass drawn in feather and nerve. Nyx disappears into rain, then flickers back, unchanged by doubt. The cliff becomes a rumor under the haze. Ava said, "The air stings, but it holds." Rowan said, "Hold is enough for now." A slap of gust spins her a quarter turn. She corrects with a stubborn tilt. The sea drums a warning on rock, steady as a metronome of ruin. Nyx rides a high track, collecting patience like arrows. Ava commits to a longer glide, trusting a line she cannot see. Rowan said, "Trust is the only bridge up here." The storm answers with a roar that sounds like applause and threat at once. A sudden lull opens like a door. Ava drifts through and nearly forgets the weight of water. Rowan slips beside her, a moving landmark with quiet authority. Nyx climbs, taking the measure of silence as if it were prey. The cliff is a dark scripture beneath them, illegible but stern. Ava said, "Is this mercy or a trick?" Rowan said, "Either way, use it." The lull thins, edges curl back toward violence. A long wave stands and bows, then smashes its crown. Ava tests a shallow dive and feels the sky answer with a lift. Nyx rolls, catching the same pocket, drawing a clean line through rain. Rowan said, "Remember the angle that gave you breath." Ava stores it where fear cannot reach quickly. The door begins to close, hinges grinding on thunder. The storm regathers itself, impatient. Ava feels the first slap as a teacher's tap turned warning. Rowan widens his circle, ready to intercept error. Nyx narrows her orbit until paths will meet. The sea writes crescents of foam that point at open water. Ava said, "I know the cut that held me." Rowan said, "Then carve it again." A hard crosswind shoves from the blind side. Ava folds a fraction, then reopens on the remembered angle. The cliff breathes a bitter draft that tries to pull her home and down. Nyx commits to a slow stoop, not for blood, but for verdict. Ava threads between gusts like a needle finding cloth. Rowan said, "You are flying now." The storm admits nothing, but it does not take her. The world, for a moment, is balance on a blade. The storm loosens its grip, leaving a restless hush across the cliff. Ava drifts into calmer air, feathers soaked but holding. Rowan steadies beside her, body an anchor in chaos. Nyx lingers high, shadow etched against gray. Ava said the silence feels sharper than the roar. Rowan said in silence, the truth of flight is heavier. The cliff line smolders with wet stone smell, every drop echoing a survival not yet claimed. Ava trembles, muscles raw from strain. Rowan edges closer, wings cutting a path she can follow. Nyx wheels above, patient as the storm reforms in distance. Ava whispers into the air, "I am still here." Rowan said, "Still here is the first step towards strength." A gull cries below, harsh reminder that the world remains indifferent. Ava tests a shallow bank, fragile but deliberate. Rowan traces her move, a teacher without touch. The sea rolls, indifferent witness, as fragile hope takes shape. Mist threads through the cliff's edge, turning stone into veil. Ava rests her wings, breath laboring, but her gaze burns steady. Rowan hovers close, a sentinel against the invisible. Nyx darts through cloud, swift punctuation to silence. Ava said the air feels thin, like glass about to break. Rowan said, "Do not fear the break. Bend within it." Rain returns in a whisper, painting faint arcs across their paths. Ava quivers, but does not collapse. Small strength growing through ache. Rowan tilts and demonstrates, a wing angle that invites balance. Ava mirrors shakily, but the line holds. Nyx circles once, then vanishes behind the cloud wall, a reminder of looming trial. Ava mutters, "If I fall now, I fall knowing I tried." Rowan said, "Trying shapes the sky more than falling." The horizon blurs, but Ava remains in its frame. Ava slips lower, skimming air close to the waves. Rowan tracks beside her, the tide of patience carrying him steady. Nyx perches briefly on a jagged outcrop, eyes reflecting cold fire. Ava said, "The water's pull feels stronger than the sky." Rowan said, "Rise or drown, the choice answers only you." Foam leaps upward, trying to seize her shadow. Ava beats wings hard, chest rattling with effort. Rowan glides a fraction above, embodying the path she must claim. Nyx shifts, preparing for another test unseen. The cliff shudders under new surf, an endless drumbeat of trials. Ava gasps, wings catching an updraft by accident, body jerking upward. Rowan said, "Accident teaches, if you accept its lesson." Ava steadies, breath ragged but eyes resolved. The sea waits below, unbothered, patient for another chance to claim. The storm retreats inland, leaving shredded clouds and wounded light. Ava hovers in unsteady rhythm, body remembering every gust. Rowan aligns parallel, a mirror of endurance. Nyx launches again, wings cutting clean geometry through fading rain. Ava said, "The air carries ghosts of the storm." Rowan said, "Ghosts cannot harm if you do not follow them." The sea darkens, calm, returning only in fragments. Ava flexes her wings wider, strength tested but not broken. Rowan turns and banks, inviting her into a circle of flight. Ava follows, each correction less frantic. Nyx dives low, forcing her to shift path. Ava said, "Every choice feels like a blade." Rowan said, "Every blade can cut a road forward." Silence grows louder than thunder, pressing them into the moment. Dark falls sooner, clouds thickening again across the rim. Ava huddles on a rock ledge, feathers slick but body alive. Rowan perches close, gaze scanning skies restless with threat. Nyx hovers high, a sentinel, unwilling to vanish yet. Ava said the earth feels harder now, cruel and safe at once. Rowan said, "Ground is mercy and prison together." Waves boom below, their rhythm marking the hours of survival. Ava lowers her head, chest rising with fatigue, but not surrender. Rowan lifts a wing, sheltering her from sharp drizzle. Nyx circles against the dark eyes lit like sparks in fading gray. Ava whispers, "I did not break today." Rowan said, "Not breaking is the shape of tomorrow." Night folds across cliff and sea, hiding all but endurance. Morning drags a gray net across the cliff. The wind remembers last night and sharpens its teeth. Ava holds the line she learned, but her breath writes doubt. Rowan floats near, measuring every tremor. Nyx cuts a thin arc, silent as flint. A rival gull bursts from the haze, hungry and bold. Ava said, "He wants the air beneath me." Rowan said, "Then own it first." The gull faints, then rams the slipstream. Ava skids sideways, feathers hissing. Rocks leap closer, grinning. Rowan climbs, offering a safer corridor. Nyx hangs above, watching the pattern form. The rival dives again, faster and mean. Ava said, "I will not give the sky." She tilts hard into the gust, finds a knife edge, and rides it. The gull overshoots, cursing in scraps of rain. Rowan said, "Hold the cut." Ava steadies, burning but unbroken. The sea claps without caring. Clouds boil lower and swallow the ridge. The air thickens like wool soaked in salt. Ava pumps once, twice, chasing a vanishing corridor. Rowan shifts to windward, a quiet map in motion. Nyx skims the ceiling, reading seams no eye can see. The rival returns, louder and closer. Ava said, "He wants my fear to fly for him." Rowan said, "Let only your angles speak." A slab of gust slams her chest. Gravity grins and invites her down. She folds a fraction, then opens on memory. The wing finds that old miracle. Lift blooms like fire in rain. The rival slashes again, but Ava is elsewhere. Nyx flicks a warning arc above his path. He wobbles, greed outpaced by weather. Rowan said, "Make the sky choose you." Ava holds, and the storm cannot shake her free. Hunger arrives without sound. It carves at focus and steals heat. Ava feels the hollow open and widen. The sea throws silver darts that look like food, but are only light. Rowan drifts closer, not touching, but near enough to lend nerve. Nyx vanishes behind a rag of cloud and returns with purpose. Ava said, "My wings burn slower now." Rowan said, "Slow is still forward." A lull pretends to be rest and becomes a trap. She sags and drops a body length. Foam lifts claws to take her. Ava claws back with 3 ragged beats. The hollow protests and grows. Nyx peels downward, shepherding her toward a thin lift. Ava said, "I will not be eaten by my own emptiness." Rowan said, "Name it, then fly past it." She does, barely, and the cliff edge creeps nearer. A shadow stitches itself to the water and rises. Nyx narrows her orbit and locks on it. The rival senses a larger danger and melts into mist. Ava steadies, unaware of the new script. Rowan tilts, signaling caution with a careful bank. The shadow resolves into a dark fin and vanishes again. The sea keeps its secrets, then shares one. A seal breaks the surface, startled, then gone. Behind it, something larger moves. Ava said, "The world below moves like rumor." Rowan said, "Rumor can end a story." A rogue wave shoulders the cliff and sprays high. The air fills with shattered mirrors. Ava blinks and loses a line. Nyx knifes between her and the cliff, forcing space. The dark shape fades, patient as hunger. The storm reloads its silence. The wind turns cunning and strips balance from breath. Ava aims for a jut of rock that promises rest. The promise tilts and slides away. Rowan dives to flank and lift her margin. Nyx rises, then stoops, drawing the rival from hiding. He lunges and misses, rattled by her cut. Ava said, "One ledge, and I belong to myself again." Rowan said, "Claim it or make a new one." The gust hits oblique and mean. Ava folds to a blade and slips its trap. She reaches the rock, but not clean. A wing scrapes stone and screams. Feathers tear, pain hot and bright. She lands crooked, alive, and shaking. Rowan settles beside, eyes fierce with pride and fear. Nyx holds high station, hunting only time. The sea applauds with knives of foam. Dawn scrapes pale metal across the sea, and truth steps out of cloud. Nyx rides a clean seam of air, not hunting greed, but carrying hunger that is not her own. Ava watches the arc and feels the pattern change inside it. Rowan shifts closer, reading the turn with old eyes. A thin cry travels on the wind from cliffs higher than fear. Ava said, "She is not a blade today." Rowan said, "She is a bridge." Nyx breaks off from Ava and angles inland, swift and exact. The storm's wreckage glitters like shards that forgot to cut. The rival reappears and fades, confused by mercy and motion. Ava learns that danger can also be duty dressed in rain. Rowan said, "Understand before you flee." The sky holds them quiet, while a new map draws itself between waves and stone. Nyx slips along the cliff face toward a hidden crease of rock. Ava keeps distance, drawn by a need sharper than safety. Rowan stays between watch and guard, a hinge that will not break. From a narrow shelf, two shapes pulse like small fires in shadow. Ava said, "The cry carries names I do not know." Rowan said, "Names can be reasons." Nyx lands without flourish and lowers her head. The wind softens, as if to listen. The world rearranges its laws for a breath. Ava understands that pursuit was provision, not malice. Rowan said, "Every hunger answers another." The sea agrees in a quieter voice. The rival passes once more, and does not dare a cut. Revelation changes weight before it changes weather. Ava feels fear loosen a single knot, then tie a wiser one. Rowan turns his circle into a lesson, and not a shield. Nyx rises again, lighter by purpose, and heavier by time. The cliff keeps its counsel, but its silence is kinder. Ava said, "I thought only of my fall." Rowan said, "Think also of those who wait." The chick's cries fade under wind and return like tides. Ava rides a line that answers with steadier lift. Nyx passes above without threat, a neighbor to risk. The rival drifts wide, measuring a different prize. Rowan said, "Balance is a flock made of strangers." Ava believes it for a heartbeat longer than before. The sea adds a small promise in silver. The environment decides to speak with flood instead of thunder. Upcoast, a brown river lung breaks its banks and hurries toward the bay. Debris marches in rows, turning coves into traps. Ava sees driftwood spinning like spears under the cliff. And Rowan smells silt and knows what drowned fields bring. Nyx hovers, uneasy, as the water stains widen. Ava said, "The sea is not itself today." Rowan said, "The land is inside it now." The current gathers a slick that fools the eye with false floors. Resting places vanish into moving skin. Nyx abandons the low hover and climbs for clarity. Ava follows the higher map, renouncing easy ground. Rowan said, "Trust the height that keeps you honest. Truth brings a price even when it heals." Nyx must hunt again, and the line may cross Ava's fear. Rowan narrows the corridor to keep paths clean. The rival tests the edges, smelling advantage where duty divides. Ava said, "If she comes for me, I will understand and still resist." Rowan said, "Understanding sharpens the wing, not dulls it." Nyx sets a measured stoop, not at Ava, but at the swarm where baitfish boil. The water splits into quicksilver alphabets. Ava holds station, learns patience from the grammar below. The rival dives at the fringe and steals scraps. Nyx rises with enough to quiet two small fires. Rowan said, "Now you know how storms can feed what they break." Ava files it beside the pain that taught her to stand. The sky sharpens into a battlefield, wind screaming with purpose. Ava rises into the corridor where storms and predators wait. Rowan shadows her flank, silent but resolute. Nyx arcs above, talons coiled in hunger. The rival gull bursts wide, wings ragged with desperation. Ava said, "The air cuts sharper than stone." Rowan said, "Then make the cut yours." Rain splinters sideways, turning vision into shards. The gull dives, beak bared, but Ava rolls and meets him with defiance. Feathers scatter, the sky breaking into 1,000 knives. Nyx stoops from height, carving past them both, her strike meant for claim, not blood. Ava steadies, muscles trembling, heart louder than the thunder. Rowan banks hard to shield her space. The sea shouts approval, pounding the cliffs. The fight has begun, brutal and merciless. The clash echoes in feathers and cries. Ava claws upward, every beat slower, every breath fire. Rowan pushes near, lifting her with his draft. Nyx wheels back skyward, clutching a fish ripped from surf. The rival turns savage, diving again, greedy for chaos. Ava said, "The air steals my strength." Rowan said, "Then borrow mine." He tilts into the gust, breaking it so her path clears. Lightning flashes, freezing all wings in silver silhouettes. The rival shrieks, cutting toward Ava's blind side. Rowan intercepts, forcing his body into the blow. Feathers rip, blood sharp in rain. Ava gasps but steadies, refusing the fall. Nyx circles above, her prize screaming, but her eyes burning with choice. Rowan said, "Fly through me, not for me." Ava pushes, broken sky answering her command. Pain colors the sky now. Rowan falters, one wing dragging against the wind. Ava feels the void rush in behind him. Nyx dives lower, fish still clutched but eyes locked on Rowan. "I do deal." The rival circles, sensing weakness, laughter in his wings. Ava said, "If I stop, he falls." Rowan said, "If you stop, all ends." She folds into the slipstream, forcing her body beneath Rowan's weight. The storm hammers them, but the lift grows. The rival slashes again, aiming for the wounded. Nyx stoops and scatters him with a scream that shakes stone. Ava breathes ragged, her body near breaking. Rowan steadies for a heartbeat, then wavers again. Ava said, "Hold for me, and I will hold for you." Lightning answers in a fork, burning truth across the clouds. The storm waits for a victor. The sea explodes upward in geysers of foam. Ava drags herself and Rowan higher, her chest burning. Nyx hurls into the rival, wings striking, beak slashing, fury unmasked. The gull screeches, feathers ripped, falling in chaos toward the surf. Ava gasps, muscles unraveling. Rowan lifts weakly, finding strength in her courage. Nyx wheels back, body slick with salt and blood not her own. Ava said, "I am fire and rain now." Rowan said, "Then burn until the storm surrenders." The rival vanishes into waves, claimed without ceremony. Silence threatens to fall, but thunder steals it back. Ava steadies her wings, ragged but radiant. Rowan banks into her line, guarding her breath. Nyx screams across the storm, defiant, alive. The climax rises like the sea itself. The sky narrows to a knife edge. Ava leads the line now, storm clawing every feather. Rowan steadies behind her, wounded but unbroken. Nyx climbs high, watching as witness and judge. The sea waits below, roaring its demand. Ava said, "This air belongs to me." Rowan said, "Then claim it loud enough for the storm to hear." She dives, then pulls sharp into the wind, slicing the gale into obedience. Lightning ignites her path, painting survival in fire. Rowan follows, slower but fierce. Nyx stoops once, screaming a verdict that splits the clouds. The storm rages, then buckles, giving breath back to wings. Ava rides higher than ever, every scar carved into strength. Rowan smiles through pain, proud beyond fear. The sky bows for a moment, not in mercy but respect. Morning stands on broken light and quiet thunder. The storm leaves its teeth in the water and goes inland to dream. Ava hovers over the ledge where fear once lived. Rowan settles nearby, wings stiff, breath measured and sure. Nyx keeps a high circle, eyes bright with unfinished duty. The sea wears a bandage of foam and remembers everything. Ava said, "The sky feels heavier after victory." Rowan said, "Victory is only breath borrowed." Driftwood turns slow orbits in the cove, plotting false land. A torn feather clings to wet stone like a vow. Nyx drops and lifts again, counting needs the wind does not count. Ava tests a glide and meets a kinder hand of air. Rowan said, "Kind is not safe, but use it." The cliff exhales silt and salt and old rain. Ava traces the memory that carried her through knives. The day answers with space enough to heal and not fall. Silence lays a thin veil across the water, but the world beneath keeps moving. Ava studies the seam where wind rides the swell. Rowan shifts a feather and swallows the ache. Nyx crosses the Erie once, then again, guardian in motion. Far upriver, the flood still feeds brown into blue. Ava said the ground tried to drown the sea. Rowan said, "The sea keeps what it needs and forgets the rest." A piece of rope pretends to be a perch and slides under. Ava learns the shape of traps that look like help. Nyx spears the air and climbs, wary of drifting snares. The cliff smells of mud and cut grass dragged from inland. Ava widens her circle and holds balance with smaller effort. Rowan said, "Ease is permission, not promise." The tide rises, soft fists against the stone. The sky draws open like a slow wound closing. Hunger returns without anger, only arithmetic. Ava feels the count of beats she can spend before ground. Rowan drafts beside her, offering shape without touch. Nyx sweeps the shoreline where bait should gather. The rival is gone, folded into the ledger of water. Ava said, "I will eat and not be eaten by the wanting." Rowan said, "Choose the clean water, not the easy shine." A boil stutters and fades, false signal over brown. Farther out, a truer shimmer writes itself. Ava aims and rides the lift that points toward need. Nyx braces the air behind her with a stern arc. Small silver lives fracture the surface and mend. Ava takes enough, then holds the line for breath. Rowan said, "Enough is a high cliff you can stand on." The sea approves with a softer drum. The path bends toward the cliff where names wait. Nyx leads them inland to the high shelf. Ava follows not as prey but as neighbor to need. Rowan keeps the wind honest with a measured bank. The Erie opens like a small lantern in gray rock. Lark cries first, bright and thin. Flint answers with a rasp that wants the world. Ava said, "Their hunger is the echo of mine." Rowan said, "Echoes teach what started the sound." Nyx lands and offers the sea's silver to the new storm mouths. The wind hushes for a heartbeat longer than mercy. Ava reads the lesson in quiet sharing. Rowan reads the future in how she reads. Foam breathes below and does not reach. The day lifts its face and keeps the vow of light. Evening draws lines between cost and gift. The wind cools and smooths, and the horizon remembers blue. Ava settles on a narrow spur that once cut her. Rowan lands with care, pain folded but present. Nyx climbs to a black thread against amber cloud. The sea slows its heartbeat and keeps watch. Ava said, "I began in a fist and arrived in a hand." Rowan said, "Hold the hand, but sharpen the wing." Distant thunder mumbles like an old story retold. Lark and flint quiet, tiny furnaces banked for night. Ava tucks the day beneath her ribs and finds room for more. Rowan leans into the breeze and lets it read his scars. Nyx traces a last circle and writes full stop in the sky. The cliff knows what was paid, and does not speak it. The world becomes steady enough to dream without falling. The cliff stands quiet under the first pale streaks of dawn. Ava rises slowly, wings catching soft currents, her body scarred but alive. Rowan steadies himself nearby, breathing shallow yet proud. Nyx watches from high shadow, a silent oath above. The sea rolls steady, its roar now softened to rhythm instead of rage. Ava said, "The sky remembers me." Rowan said, "It remembers those who claimed it." She arcs higher, strength worn thin, but carrying weight like song. The cliff that once threatened, now bends into memory. The world opens wide, waiting. The ocean reflects shards of amber as Ava pushes farther from the cliff. Rowan glides beneath her, pain hidden in silence, but resolve unbroken. Nyx circles wide, sentinel of air and memory. Ava said, "Each beat feels like carrying all storms." Rowan said, "Storms carve wings that last." The horizon stretches, endless, marked by light, not shadow. Ava glides steady, balance carved from trials, her breath even, her gaze unshaken. The sea sighs and accepts her path. The rival's absence lingers like an echo swallowed by waves. Ava feels no chase behind her, only space. Rowan banks gently, his scars written as proof, not weakness. Nyx steadies her orbit, keeping vigil without challenge. Ava said, "The silence feels heavier than the storm." Rowan said, "Heavier things teach us how to stand." The horizon bends into possibility, the cliff fading behind. Ava's path no longer borrowed, but her own. The day stretches without threat, only distance. Ava glides higher, every beat now chosen, not forced. Rowan drifts beside her, proud shadow to her rise. Nyx keeps wide circles, her cry sharp against the quiet. Ava said, "The sky bends but does not break." Rowan said, "Neither do you." Foam paints white scars across the ocean, but none rise to strike. Ava steadies on the wind, carrying herself toward horizon's promise. The horizon sharpens into fire as sun begins to sink. Ava cuts across the light, shadow stretching long over the water. Rowan glides lower, scarred but unbowed, eyes lifted. Nyx stoops once, not in strike but farewell, then climbs. Ava said, "The storm gave me wings stronger than its winds." Rowan said, "The world will remember your flight." The sea holds still for a breath, honoring the passage. The last cry splits the silence, not of fear but survival, and lingers beyond the frame.